Hi everyone. My name is Kwame, and I used to work at Mastercard in product, and I recently joined Verizon Media about 3 months ago. So pretty new to the Bay Area. I actually just moved here. So the topic that brings us here today is I used to be a software engineer, and I moved from software engineering to product. So um, what brings us here today is this topic. So a common topic from engineering to product, overcoming the imposter syndrome. And I would generally like this to be a conversational talk. So I try to prepare as few slides as possible so that it can be more of a conversation. I would like your input as well. So going forward, let's try to do that. It's going to be a fun talk. All right, so the agenda. So first, I would like to talk about like fun facts about me. What is product management? My journey into product, the imposter syndrome. We can start just taking a look at what it is and some facts around it, and then some challenges I faced, and then 5 issues I've picked up. There's more, but there are 5 issues that I picked out just regards to the imposter syndrome. And then how I overcame imposter syndrome. Hopefully, it will be useful to you. And then some key takeaways that I would like you to really lock in and take home with you. All right, so start with some fun facts about me. So I'm originally from Ghana. It's a country in West Africa, and I actually grew up in the south of Africa in a small country called Swaziland. The Kingdom of Swaziland is one of the last remaining monarchies in the world, and it has about 1.4 million people. So, coming from a very small place in Africa. So, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents started off as teachers, and I guess I was fortunate to watch them start up their own businesses whilst they were teachers. And My mom started a retail business. My dad and my mom together started a consulting business. And African parents like to get their children involved in their businesses. So I was involved in various aspects, sometimes running my mom's retail business when she was away. And in my dad's business, I worked as a driver. I also worked as within the office realm. So it gave me some good experience as I was growing up. So through that, I then started my own sneaker business. So my mom used to, as she started her retail business, she used to bring home some goods for us. She used to travel around the world. She comes back and she brings some goods for us. And for me, it was sneakers most of the time. And I used to go to school, so primary school and high school, and I would be walking and people would be complimenting my sneakers. And it took me a long time to actually, for it to click that I can actually make a business out of this, right? What I'm wearing, I can actually bring it to the people and make some money. So I started to source some sneakers locally in Swaziland. I got them for about $20. I got the startup capital from my mom. I got them for $20, and then I'll sell them for about $60. So I made some good profits and good pocket money off that business. I did that for a few years, and then I ventured into music. So music, writing music, producing music, and doing the whole shebang about concerts and stuff like that. So figuring out how the music business works, and that gave me another arm, like to learn how to build a business, to learn how to make money at a very young age. Um, I moved here to the US when I was 19. I moved for school and I studied computer science. It was very interesting because like I actually first wanted to study business, but I remember one time when I was doing my assignment, a friend of mine who mentors me till this day, he works for IBM. He told me, "Hey, I think you'd be really good at computer science. You should try it out." And I tried it out, and I never looked back. So I initially went there to study business, and then I changed into computer science. I studied in a small college called Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, a really small place, but I had a great time. It gave me the opportunity to focus and to build myself as an engineer. I have a background in the payments industry. So I started off in my sophomore year. interning for Mastercard. I worked through software engineering, and then eventually I full-time started working for them within biometrics and authentication. So that's been my core experience in like full-time. So that's been fun. And lastly, I just recently moved to the Bay Area. So 3 months ago, I moved here. It's actually 3 days ago was exactly 3 months. So still new to the area. I'm looking forward to, exploring the area and meeting more people. All right, so this is just like a visual of my journey. So the first one, obviously, a very happy man there. It was a struggle. School was a struggle. Computer science, math, that's what I studied, computer science and math. It was a struggle, but that was the start to my career, so I was excited. On the right side, this was at my former company, Mastercard. I was basically working with a team pitching a new product. And then on the bottom left was about 2 weeks ago at my company, Verizon Media, where I was launching my product, Media Commerce, across the entire company. So that was fun in New York. And then in the middle was before I left MasterCard, I did an Own Your Career panel where I was talking about the importance of knowing who you are and taking that risk to do exactly what you would like to do, and which for me was moving from software engineering to product, which was really fun. And then on the bottom right is me at Harvard Business School with a few colleagues there. I was basically doing some diversity recruiting, which is something I'm really passionate about. And I've done a lot for MasterCard, and I'll be doing that for Verizon Media. All right, so let's get started. So what is product management? So this is the industry definition. I have watched like hundreds of product school videos, and I always see this come out all the time. If you Google it, if you do a quick Google search, you'll see the same thing. There's an intersection, so they define it as product as the intersection of UX, tech, and business. And then in the middle, magically, you are there. That's what they call a product manager. While I agree with this in some regard, like I feel like it's missing a few aspects, right? There's a big element that's missing. So there's stakeholder management, right? Basically between user experience, engineering, and business, which could be marketing and sales and so forth. But there's no element there that dictates the product manager. I feel like being a product manager also it means that you need to manage yourself. So I think that's missing here. So my definition, I think it's missing you as a product manager. It's a big element there, and you'll see why as it relates to the imposter syndrome. And then there's some other aspects, like it doesn't actually say what you do as a product manager. It doesn't indicate that, why you do what you do, and then how are you going to do it. Those things are not really evident within that diagram. So what is product management? So I believe product management, basically, it culminates two things. So it's the why and the what. That's what the product manager owns. So the why is going to be the product strategy, and then the what is going to be the product roadmap that you define based on your product strategy. And then basically across this, you're going to define what problems are worth solving. There are always problems to solve in product management, but as a product manager, it's your job to kind of define and actually decide what's important to solve and prioritize that. And all this is brought together by the product manager. That's why I have it at the bottom. So this is my definition of product management. So my journey to product management, just to fuel the discussion on the imposter syndrome, I just want you to have a clear vision or clear picture of what I had to go through in order to be here today. And I think that'll give you some context for the discussion. So it all started in 2015. At Harvard Business School, when my school sent me to Africa Business Conference at Harvard Business School. So the reason for going there initially was, as mentioned, I was studying computer science and mathematics. That was my focus. And I had done some business, but not at the large scale before I actually started studying. And for me, I got to a point where I really wanted to learn what it meant to build a business, to build products from the ground up. And this opportunity came by, so I got some funding from my school, and they sent me to the Harvard Business School Africa Business Conference. Now, what was not part of my plan was to get recruited or to look for a job. I was not looking for a job. I was really going there to learn and then come back with my learnings and then figure out how I'm going to start my own business at scale. But I guess fortunately, I was recruited by Mastercard, and it took a few months, but I actually landed my first software engineering internship with them, where I worked within a team that was building internal tools. So that was my first internship. So now I had the opportunity to go back to school and reassess what do I want to do for the next summer. Do I want to go home and start something? At least start it whilst I'm still fresh, and not working for someone. But then they called me back. They said they wanted me back and they put me in a different business unit. And I thought it was a great opportunity to take. So I landed my second software engineering internship. Little did I know this is where I would actually pivot. So at this time, I was there purely for software engineering, but my manager at the time basically offered me the opportunity to work on a project outside of my day-to-day, which is building tools for the team as a full stack engineer. So he basically, we had returning interns, and he asked all of us actually to just work on a project outside of our day-to-day. So we came up with a problem, which basically at the time was college students basically are unable to authenticate themselves through to take entrance tests. They forget their IDs. So how can we make sure that at all times college students can be able to authenticate themselves and take tests and so forth on campus? And that was to use their phones. So we came up with a product basically that leveraged the biometrics, so your fingerprint, your face, as well as your voice, to this is a prototype, to basically authenticate yourself into these mediums. Through this, we were awarded a prize by Mastercard Labs, which is Mastercard's innovation arm, and then through that also I was offered I started the conversations with the authentication team to get a full-time job there. Now I went back to school, and then I was working on my software engineering full-time interviewing, which was a really stressful period. But through this time, I was very curious. So I started just searching, like, what do I actually want to do? What are people doing? I usually go on LinkedIn and see what are people doing. And then through that, I stumbled upon product school on YouTube. This was, I guess, a big turning point for me because I started getting ingrained in product school videos, watching them all the time and understanding what it meant to be a product manager. And it slowly dawned on me that it kind of is like you're like, the term used is like a mini CEO. And that's what I wanted to be at that time. I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to build my own business. And product school gave me that and understanding of what it means to be a product manager. So I took this back. And as I was interviewing, I decided I actually dropped a lot of my software engineering interviews, some of them in the last minute. And then I started focusing on trying to be recruited for product positions without any experience, without any prior interviewing experience and so forth. Through this, Mastercard actually offered me my first product opportunity, and I worked on the biometrics platform for a similar product that we worked on as a prototype as interns. So we're working on Identity Check Mobile, which is a biometric product that allows customers to authenticate themselves using their biometrics. So across face, voice, fingerprint, and then behavioral biometrics. So I was the product owner for the biometric platform. So on the platform side, so technical and not on the consumer side. So 2019, early this year, I got promoted and I started working on our core authentication platform, empowering cardholders to authenticate themselves through online payments, so through mobile web and so forth. So I only worked there for 7 months before I was recruited by Verizon Media, and I currently lead the Media Commerce Initiative, so building commerce across all the media brands at the company. So it's a horizontal role, pretty fun, and I've been there for 3 months. Okay, so the imposter syndrome. So I have a question for you. So does anyone want to tell me what they think what it is to be an imposter?
Feeling out of place.
Feeling out of place, okay.
Something that you're not.
Something that you're not, okay.
You act as if you are someone else.
Okay. That's
25 someone didn't.
Yeah, these are all correct. So basically, I did a quick Google search, and basically, it's just to pretend like you're someone else and to be a fraudster. So, how many of you currently feel like you're an imposter in your job? Just one person, really?
Some days I'm good, some
Yeah.
days
Some days.
okay. Fake it till you make it on some days.
Yeah,
Other
yeah.
days I'm
I like that. I like that. Before I move on, just to see show of hands, how many of you are engineers right now? Oh wow, okay. And then how many of you are in product right now? Okay. How many of you in product actually transitioned from software engineering? It's one person. Okay, awesome. Cool. I have a sense of the crowd now. So, all right. So, about 58% of tech workers feel like imposters. And I put an asterisk there because I'm a PM, so I have to back this up by data, like what's the sample size and so forth, right? This basically was a survey taken by Blind. How many of you know Blind? Blind, yeah. Very useful app, right? So it was taken by Blind. So for those who don't know Blind is basically an app that allows you to post things anonymously. You can ask questions about salary. You can ask questions about how to basically tackle some situations you have at work and so forth. And it has an ID there. So it says where you work, but it never says who you are. So based on the survey taken by Blind in late 2018, the sample size was over 10,000 people. And this is across the world, mind you. So of 17 companies represented, only 3 had less than 50% of the surveyed employees experiencing imposter syndrome. That is incredible. Just 3 out of 17 companies had less than 50% of the employees actually experiencing imposter syndrome. So this gives you kind of like, it's a relatively small sample size of the entire, I guess, sample size of tech workers, but it just shows you what problem we have. It's a big problem. You and I experience it. I'm up here and I'm talking about the imposter syndrome, and that's basically because I've gone through it. And some days I still go through it, but I've found ways to combat it because it's all about self-confidence. And I have some ways that I think I can share with you that will help you as well. So some challenges I faced. So as mentioned, I moved from engineering. And these are some of the things that were going through my mind, and I'll go through them one by one. So the first thing is I'm not good enough in coding. I'm sure a lot of engineers go through this. Like the problem here, I think, is that we tend to compare ourselves with people, and we forget that people they may have had more experience than you, right? And you've had less experience. So you're yet to get to that position that person is at that point in time of comparison. I'll give you an example. I remember when I first started, I started coding at age 20. I'm 25 now. I started coding at age 20. And there were people who had the luxury of starting to code in high school. I didn't. I started when I got to college. So me comparing myself to someone who had who had an opportunity to learn how to code in Python at the very least in high school really was not fair, because this was my start, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to be less of a software engineer than that person, right? So I think there are issues there in saying that you're not good enough, but it's constantly something that you go through, and I went through it a lot. Another thing is there's so much to learn. I was thinking about this when I wrote this. I remember in college, I used to purchase so many books, so many coding books. And I'd like find myself on the weekends holding like a big box of books, going to the library while people are just having fun and whatnot. I'll be going there to the library and I'm just like, I have so much to learn. I have so much to learn. And then I find myself not even finishing it because I'm overburdening myself with so much. There's always going to be so much to learn, whatever field you are, especially software engineering. There's always a new language. There's always a new update to the language and so forth. So I think the merit is just being comfortable with what you know and knowing that you will get there, but it takes time. You don't need to like try and rush and compare yourself with other people. The other thing is, what I know now is not enough. Like engineering, there's always a new push. There's always a new the new in language that companies are looking for now. Like PHP is no longer really used, but not long ago, Facebook was using it as a backend coding language. But people learned PHP who took the time, whatnot. They had to learn a new language. And granted, sometimes it's not that hard to migrate, but this is just an example, right? There's what you know now will never be enough, but you need to be comfortable with what you know. The last thing is I failed an interview and it's just not meant to be. Like, how many of you have gone through this before? Be it in engineering or anything, right? It's a grueling process. Software engineering interviews are not fun. Like sometimes it feels like they test you more in the interview than they test you in the job, right? And that's just how it is. Like it's there to really test your mindset. Like, are you gonna keep going or are you gonna just let it go and just give up? So that was a big thing for me, a big challenge for me going through these interviews. And then on the other side, product, almost similar. So the first thing is I'm an introvert. How am I meant to constantly communicate with people? Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And it was so hard for me to move from software engineering to product. It was just, I felt like people constantly demanding me to speak when I didn't want to. I just wanted to think, right? That's how I was trained, to do less speaking, to think more, and then apply my knowledge. So this was a big challenge for me. Second thing is I'm more comfortable being an engineer. Do you notice the contradiction? Like in software engineering, I'm saying that, hey, I'm not good enough to code, but now I'm saying I'm more comfortable being an engineer, right? This is just the whole problem with imposter syndrome, right? It causes you to make some contradictions or make some paradoxes that you're not even aware of, right? So that's a big problem I went through. How do I learn strategy? These people seem to be so good at it. That was me when I first started my first product job. Like there were so many people around me who had been doing strategy or who came from the business side. So who are more comfortable around that side of product. And I was more comfortable being on the tech side. So when they ask questions about technology, how things work technically, like, architecture, I'll be like the first one to want to speak to it. And when they start talking about what is a strategy, whatnot, I'll simply crumble, just like watch them and try and, not even be involved. This was a problem I went through. And that's another thing. These people have had the time to nurture their strategy. Their mindset and strategy. Strategy is a skill. It's not easy. It's something you don't learn in school. You learn over time. So, that's another unfair thing if you choose to say that you're not good because some people are good in strategy. The last thing is another thing. I failed an interview and it's just not meant to be. When I went through software engineering interviews, I always felt like small. I felt belittled. But when I started with product management interviews, I felt even more belittled. Like, they're tough. Like, some companies just want so much from you in terms of your skill set, your experience, and how you think about problems within a very limited amount of time. It's very tough. And for me, I went through so many rejections. I went through, so many, I had to keep bouncing back, in order to feel like, you know what, it's just maybe I'm not a good fit for them. And it's not about my knowledge. It's just about I'm not a good fit for them, right? And then even though it may not be true, right? But I had to keep giving myself the leg up and making sure that I'm constantly motivated to keep learning, to keep pushing, and to understand what I had done wrong. Okay, so now I've picked out, there's so many issues, don't get me wrong, with imposter syndrome. But I've picked out about 5 of them that I have an issue with, right? And the first is we work really hard, we burn out, and then we hate our jobs, right? Imposter syndrome makes you feel like you're not good enough, right? And you're not meant to be where you are. Therefore, it makes you want to work harder, twice as hard as the next person, to show that it takes you little time to actually grasp knowledge or concepts and whatnot to be able to apply. But you're really hurting yourself, right? Especially when you start a new company. So I've been working for 3 months, and it's very hard. When you join, you really want to show them that, you're up to par. Like there's a reason why you're there, right? But the thing is, we forget. Imposter syndrome just basically makes you forget that you actually allowed time to learn, right? And the learning curve is different for people. Some people and some companies as well. Some could be 3 months, some could be 6 months, depending on the company, depending on the person. So for you to try and learn everything in the first month or 2 months to start contributing, it's not realistic. Therefore, you start beating yourself up, you get exhausted, and then you hate the very thing that you really wanted to do. I've seen this a lot with friends, and same with me. I went through this. When you when you get that thing that you've been working so hard on, and you just want to show that you deserve to be there. We already know that you deserve to be there. That's why you're picked as the candidate to actually start working there. So beating yourself up and burning out just won't help anyone. We always believe that someone is watching. Therefore, we need to work 2 times harder. Like, can someone relate? No? Yeah, right? You feel like someone is watching. Really, it's your conscious watching. Right? Your conscience is watching. No one is watching. Everyone is just looking at you and trying to make sure that you're comfortable and you have everything you need in order to advance, right? But our conscience keeps telling us that, hey, you need to work harder than the next person. Even though this person has been there for 2 years, you have to show that you're better than this person. Like it's something that we really need to work on. And that's one big issue I see with imposter syndrome. We focus on what others have to say about us. And this could be good or bad things. And then we use that to define our value. Like this is really important because like just generally just in life, right? Constantly listening to noise. So what people are saying, good or bad. So sometimes good, right? Everyone likes to hear something good about them, but you're so quick to take that and then use that to define your value. And like, oh, this person said, today I look good, so I really look good, right? Why couldn't you realize that before someone told you, right? And the same thing when someone says something bad, and this is relating to just in the workplace. If someone says, oh, Kwame's new and we don't like, like he's not doing well, he's been here 2 months, it doesn't matter what that person says. I think ultimately it matters what you're doing. If you're doing your best, that's great. And then obviously your boss, right? If your boss thinks you're doing a great job, that's great. So I think this is one thing that really makes us fall. And imposter syndrome just dominates us with this very point. We allow the fast pace of the industry to define our unique learning curve. We all have different learning curves. We all learn differently. So you comparing yourself to, I remember when I first started at my job in Mastercard, I asked someone who was in the same class as me, same cohort, who had started about 6 months before. I asked her, how long did it take you to actually learn your job and get, ingrained into the company? And she told me 7 months. And I used that as a yardstick. I was like, oh, okay, so it means I have 6 or 7 months to actually get into my job and start doing well. We're in totally 2 different departments. She was in marketing, I was in product. Very different, right? And it could take me longer, it could take me shorter, but I used someone else's experience, right? Someone else's experience to kind of define exactly how long it's going to take me to start learning. And that was a mistake. So we all have different learning curves. It could be the 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, few weeks. That's great. But so I think that's one thing to note. And the last thing is we don't take big tasks and break them down in order to achieve small wins, right? You're always going to be backlogged as a product manager. You're always going to have so much to do and you're going to have large tasks. But if you just constantly feel like you're not getting anything accomplished, that's a big problem, right? You're going to feel so weighed down and overwhelmed and you pretty much get nothing done. What I've learned in product is once you have so much to do, if you take the little things, if it just simply means like send an email, you write it down, I need to send this email. And then by the end of the day, if you send that email, you just cross it out. It just gives you so much relief. Like you're like, I actually did something today, even though it's just sending an email. But it takes away the weight that you have in feeling like, oh, I have so much to do and so forth. So make sure you write down what you need to do, break them down into smaller tasks, and try and do the ones that are easier first before you start working on the more complicated tasks. small wins give you that encouragement to be like, yes, you've actually done something and accomplished something. All right, I'm gonna move on. So overcoming this imposter syndrome. So I'm just gonna share a few things that I did practically to help me overcoming imposter syndrome from transitioning from engineering to product. The first thing was mentorship. When I first moved to New York to work for Mastercard, and I knew I was moving into a totally different role, product, and I had never done it before. What I did was I used that resource that helped me learn what product was, which is product school. I looked through the videos, and I had actually come across someone who worked at Mastercard. His name is Jesse, and I really liked his talk, and I knew he was working in New York. So I literally reached out to him. I think in my first week or my second week at Mastercard, I reached out to him. I gave him some context. I told him I just moved there, and I discovered him on product school. I kid you not, to this day, he has mentored me since that day I reached out to him. He's helped me overcome my transition because I related to him because he came from an engineering background, and I needed someone who understood where I was coming from to be able to help me through my process of transitioning. So to this day, he's mentored me, and it's because of him that I'm probably even standing here today speaking to you guys. And I really appreciate his mentorship. He has stuck with me even though I have left the company. He's still there, and he's providing me guidance every single month. We have sync-ups. So mentorship is very important. Second thing is self-reminders. Self-reminders are very important to give you that. So overcoming imposter syndrome is all about self-confidence. So giving yourself self-reminders saying that you passed the interview, that's why you're there, right? And acknowledging the fact that you actually worked to get to where you are, it's by no means luck, is very important for you to actually progress forward. For me, that's what I keep doing. Every time I feel like the imposter syndrome is overcoming me, I just remind myself that, hey, I was the only one selected for the job. Therefore, they saw something in me. And therefore, I need to ensure that I keep reminding myself that I'm good enough and there's a reason why I'm here. The third thing is I make my voice be heard. I mentioned before, so coming from engineering, my thought process was always to think more than speak. And I've had to come and change that. I think as well, but I also have to speak and make my voice heard. As a PM, you need to make sure that your voice is heard because I'm the voice of the customer for my product. And if I'm quiet and I'm not actually speaking up and ensuring that the voice of my customer and let alone my voice is heard, then I'm doing something wrong. So I think that also helps you assert yourself and just kind of like when that imposter syndrome is you're just constantly getting those feelings and you're just reminding yourself that, hey, you have a voice and you can use it to speak up. Prioritization, like I mentioned, as a PM, you have so much to do and you have a backlog of items in your personal life as well as your product. So prioritization is of the utmost importance. Sometimes I find myself prioritizing my life in addition to my work at the same time. And that's going to happen. I was talking to a colleague, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about some life event that happened to me. And I was prioritizing my work. And I forgot that there are these tasks that I need to do that actually affecting my life, which ultimately affect my work. She reminded me that, hey, I actually need to forget about work at this very moment because me prioritizing my life will help me prioritize my work. So prioritization is very important. In anything that you do, as you learn to become a PM, you'll find it being useful in your personal life as well because you always had to prioritize something over the other. And then lastly is patience. Why do I say patience? So when I was learning how to code, what I learned that I didn't have was patience. Patience is so important when you're learning how to code. Like, you can have like so many bugs in the code that you write, and if you're not patient, your code is just not going to compile. It's not going to work, right? And that's very important, right, for you to actually overcome that challenge of bugs in your code or errors, right? So patience is very important in overcoming the imposter syndrome because everything takes time. Like I mentioned, like sometimes you find yourself like not feeling like you know enough, and you feel like there's so much for you to do, but like understanding that patience is actually part of the process will help you overcome the imposter syndrome. It takes time to learn things, it takes time to do things, it takes time to execute. As a PM, you have an idea, right? You get everyone involved, stakeholders, and then you start executing. You're not going to see the results of the product tomorrow. You're not going to see it in just 1 week, right? There's a process. And patience is very important in that process. It allows you to see things through, and then you can actually, it helps you to actually have a key and proper defined end result. Okay, so now I'll just talk about a few key takeaways. The first thing I'd like to leave you with is like, just as an engineer, you possess an extremely powerful superpower, I believe, which is speaking the engineering language. It's a superpower in two ways. Firstly, it can really help you, and it could be detrimental to you as well. So on the side that it can helps you understand and picture how long something can possibly take when you're actually defining it. And how it can be detrimental is, I saw this happening with me, is coming from a tech background, you want to also, you kind of sometimes move into a gray area where you actually start saying how the engineer should do something. Like I remember one time where I wrote some requirements, and an engineer said it's going to take him, I think it was 2 weeks to do it. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? Like it can take you a couple of days, right? But what I forgot that is that, first of all, I'm not an engineer anymore, right? Secondly, it's that the code base is not one that I've worked with before. So he has a reason to say that it's going to take him a couple of weeks. That could be the code is not refactored, right? And it's not readable, right? He needs to work on that before he's actually able to implement this new class, so that it can actually, we can have a working product, right? There's certain things that you don't think through when you become a PM. That's why the how should not be owned by you. So a great superpower that could be detrimental to you, but also could be very helpful. Be able to discern what is important and what is not. So this goes back to prioritization. So I think as an engineer, you're able to do this in so many ways. And one is, when you're writing code, exactly, you have an idea of a step-by-step that you wanna put together, right? And then you forget what's irrelevant. You just focus on what is needed to get this code running. So that same framework could be applied across product. You need to be able to discern what is important to focus your time on from what is not, so that you can move the needle and make sure that every task that you prioritize is moving along. And lastly, the patience you exercise in learning how to code would serve you well. Learning how to code is a really, depending on who you are, right? It's an interesting process. It's a trial and error, and it's a success and failure process, right? So that patience that you exercise whilst you're learning this process is going to be extremely helpful, because products are not built in one day. Products take time, and there's a strategy there to get to the final endpoint. There's a roadmap to get to the final endpoint to actually have something to show for it. So being patient is extremely important as you become a product manager. All right, and my final thoughts I'd like to leave with you is with regards to the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome is a self-inflicted wound. Its cure simply lies in the boost in your self-confidence. And that is it.